That takes us nicely into our second story, which is Lloyds Bank have published some research this week looking at how our spending habits have changed during the pandemic. So I think we're more or less at the first anniversary of lockdown. It was a year ago today, as we're recording this on Wednesday morning, that businesses were telling people to go home and work from home for a little bit, not knowing it would be a year later they could go potentially start thinking about going back. But Lloyds Bank have looked at this, and I love spending data from the likes of Lloyds Bank because, again, I am a nerd when it comes to this stuff. But it's got some fascinating findings in there, including more than half of our spending now takes place online, and that's up from 38% back in last February. The distance that we travel to spend money physically has reduced. It's reduced by about a kilometre, so it's now an average of 1.2 kilometres. And that's a really good boost, I guess, for the local economy. And they also say that 8 in 10, or almost 8 in 10 of the store debit card payments we make are now contactless. So obviously cash withdrawals are plummeted, that's down by about a third, and the amount we spend in supermarkets is up by 22%. So it's this huge change in our spending habits and the way we interact with money. Not necessarily a good thing, by the way, because I think as soon as you start using cash less often, you don't have that sort of tangible, touchy-feely experience with money, and it's just too easy to tap a card and think, oh, well, it's just ones and zeros, and move on. At least this for me. But what do you think about that spending data and how our habits have changed?
I mean, it was reading research and basically going, this is exactly me. If you had molded a person and said, right, this person is the average person, this is what they've been doing, it is exactly how I am. I do almost all of my spending online now. The only time I venture out, which is very close to my house, typically, I don't think I've been further than, I went to my office once about 5 months ago, which is in central London, which is about 4 miles away.
Yeah.
The only time I venture out is to go to Sainsbury's or Tesco, which is indicative of supermarkets doing very, very well. I think this is just exactly, there was one surprise stat in here, which was that live performance spending was only down 38%, which the reason I say that's surprising is because we've been in lockdown, actual lockdown, I think for about 6 months of the year. And if we haven't been in lockdown, we've been under pretty strict rules actually that have meant that we couldn't go inside. I think there was that period in August maybe where we could start to kind of interact with people inside, if I remember rightly, maybe August, September. So I am surprised that only fell by 38%. But supermarkets are just the real winners out of all of this. I mean, they're up 22% overall. And back when everyone went mad and started buying loo roll, they were up 47% last March, which I'm sure you remember. I mean, I remember going to Big Sainsbury's, which is the biggest shop that's close to me, and just walking around with my boyfriend and just trying to find anything actually to put food together. And weirdly, people in this area of Wandsworth were not buying prawns en masse. We ended up buying loads of prawns because that was what was available in the supermarket. And there was no fresh meat. We had to buy literally those bags of pieces of frozen chicken because it's the only thing that we could get. So that's a memory that hopefully we won't be returning to during our lifetime.
I'm going to make a confession at this point. So I didn't do any panic buying when it all kicked off, so a year ago today, because I did my panic buying about a month earlier, and I was reading the headlines sort of coming out of Wuhan and thinking what might happen next. And we did this massive shop on Amazon Fresh, I think it is, or Amazon Pantry, and we were getting tinned food. We've still got quite a lot of it. We gave quite a lot of it to the food bank at the end of last year because Becky, my wife, said to me, "Look, you're never going to eat this stuff, are you?" And it was like tins of ravioli and macaroni cheese in tins and all sorts of stuff. I was never going to eat. So I did that, and I also bought myself a bow and arrow just in case things got really bad and I'd have to go out and sort of start hunting the wildlife to eat. But I didn't go buy toilet roll. I didn't go buy pasta, and I'm quite proud of that. So
Ray and I we were the total opposites of that. Really, I mean, everything hit the fan, and we were just walking through this like sort of dystopian world where there wasn't really anybody around. And we as well, we were so anti-panic buying. We were like, no, we're not going to do that. It's really bad for everybody else. And we just, by pure coincidence, we were down to like our last roll of loo roll. So we were like, we are going to have to go out and find some loo roll, and just not being able to find any, and just thinking, I can't believe this is happening. We should have been way more organized than this. And finding all sorts of little local shops actually that were still selling stuff that you know, when the big Sainsbury's and whatnot and Tesco's and all the rest of it had sold out, you actually managed to find these little local grocery stores run by local people. And that's where we managed to find some loo roll. But isn't it weird when you think about it that we're a year on from that, and that was happening a year ago? That's what we were doing. It's bizarre to think it's happened, but we're going well off on a tangent.
We're completely, that's probably my fault entirely. I mean, one of the really interesting things I think we think about when we see spending days like this and how significantly our spending habits have changed is, will that change stick? So, you know, once we're allowed to go back to, you know, normal in the summer, will we still spend locally as much as we do now? Will we still be using, I think we'll still be using contactless because that's just a habit that's become so ingrained. But I suspect our physical distance travel to spend will increase because we'll have that freedom to just go a bit further afield. I suspect we'll start spending money away from supermarkets a bit more, but I think the online spending is going to stay as it is. I think the cashless society trend is going to stay like it is. And it'll be fascinating. You know, we can talk about this in a year's time, see what that data looks like after a year of hopefully mostly normality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think people that say that coronavirus is going to cause this huge and permanent change actually are wrong on that one. I think, for instance, when you think about working from home, I think the vast majority of people will be going back to the office to some degree. Which obviously will change their spending, because as soon as you're back to a slightly different location, assuming that you have to do a commute, you will spend money in that location, be that, you know, at a coffee shop, or be that a local Sainsbury's again, or even just popping in somewhere to buy some socks or something like that. So I don't think, I completely agree. I think the local economy will probably suffer ever so slightly when things start to go back to normal. But I think things like going online, things like using contactless, I think they are here to stay because they make life so much easier. And I think it's very, very difficult to persuade people to start doing things another way when they've seen how easy something can be and when it's still readily made available to them. So I think probably that's what we'll see in the next year. But yeah, I mean, I think the location thing is purely just indicative of the virus, and actually we'll be back to pretty much normal by September-ish.